back to Inertia for Rails. This is episode 4 in our web series of building an Inertia Rails recipe application. And now we're really starting to get into the fun app stuff. If you've been with us the whole time, you've seen in episode 1, we installed a fresh Rails app with Webpack and React and installed Inertia. In episode 2, we set up some basic auth with Devise and used Inertia to make sure that that current user prop was provided to every component. And in episode 3, we started building out this app a little bit by creating a recipe model, seeding the database with some fake recipes, and creating 2 different pages that are bare bones routes. We have our individual recipe and our list of recipes. So let's keep moving on this. I promised last time that eventually we'd start getting a little bit of basic styling in, and I think now's the right time. We have 2 pages, 3 if you count our hello world, which will probably turn into some sort of a dashboard or login screen, or like post login screen. And in modern app development, normally there's some kind of layout. So let's add this layout. So first thing we're going to need is, so the way we're going to do that is we're going to do it with a layout component. If you're familiar with single page apps or with writing kind of React or Vue apps at all, this is probably a strategy you've used in the past. In the Rails world, we have our application layout, but in the React world, we need to be a little more explicit. So let's go over here to our JavaScript folder, and every component we've put in so far has been in this pages directory. This is a very specifically named directory because it's the default place Inertia looks for pages. So we're not going to use that for anything other than a page. I'm going to go ahead under JavaScript, and I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it components. And for our first component in here, I'm going to create layout.js. So what's this component going to look like? Import React, do our boilerplate. I'll skip that for a second here. This time we'll do a little. Okay. So how is this layout component going to work? What we're going to do is the goal of this layout component is that we should be able to, I'm going to save this even though it doesn't know what to do yet, is we'll want to be able to go in here and replace our wrapping component with this new layout. Layout, perfect. I am not going to say, no, I can save it. I'm not running Webpacker, so it won't compile until I refresh. So let's go back to our layout here. The way this is going to work is we're going to accept a single prop here called children, and let's just prove that it works. So we added that to recipe list. If we refresh here, this is recipe. We should get no change. But when we go back to the recipes, oh, well, we get an error. Let's find out why. Expected a string, but got an object. Check recipe list. All right. So we're passing layout, import layout. That's probably a problem in our layout. Oh, wow. That was an autocomplete problem. Yeah. We don't want to export all of React. We want to export our component. Oh, the joys of live code. Pseudo live code. You can tell that I'm being honest, or you can wonder what the standard was for a bug that I was willing to edit out. So if you look here, we have I am the layout. That's awesome. So let's create a layout here. I am not a designer. I think I am decent at user experience, but I don't really create things from scratch. So we're going to use my preferred tool, which is just Bootstrap. And to make our lives super easy, we're just going to pull in all of Bootstrap's CSS. So we're going to go ahead and put that in our application layout, which is totally our normal way of doing things. We're going to use Bootstrap 5. Let's see, we might actually get some change. Yeah, we got some font changes right out of the gate. That's fun. So how are we going to make this nav? I just said I didn't really want to design one. Well, let's see if Bootstrap has anything we want to use. We've got headers, sidebars. What kind of headers do we have here? See, this is already more than I want to do. Let's look at, here we go. I want to see nav bars, responsive nav bars. Let's just use this fixed nav bar here. Perfect. Now we have a fully fleshed out page. All I'm going to do is I'm going to view the page source. We'll see if we need to bring in some of these styles. There's body, perfect. And I am just going to grab all of their markup here. So let's copy that. Go back to layout. I think we will still want our parent tags here. And I'm going to paste that in. Let's see. Expected JSS closing tag for input. Yep. So anytime you copy paste a bunch of HTML into React, it's never going to go 100% flawlessly. So in this case, it's because there's no such thing as an automatic self-closing tag in React. All right, let's tab over and let's fix all of our classes at once. Cool. So this looks pretty good. Here we have navbar example, BG light. Was that good looking? Do we want to do that? No, let's get rid of that. Let's just use the main container here. And this is where we will drop children now. So let's see how that works. Nice. I can live with that. We got only one error, invalid tab index. So let's find out where that is. Tab index. We're going to end up ripping this out anyway, but we will fix it because we would like our console to stay clean, so we know when there's real problems. So this is good. We have a fixed nav bar. Let's start making it a little setup for us. Example, instead of fixed nav bar, we can call this Inertia recipes. I don't know what these are going to be. We have home. We'll leave those for now. I don't really know what they're going to be. Let's put on the far right here, instead of this search, or maybe just know it, let's add, this is where we're going to want our username to be. And I'm just going to add it like that, just to see how it looks. Added it kind of strangely. I would like to add the user somewhere just for the sake of example. Let's just throw it in. I'm going to accept user. And we'll make it the link here. We're going to go user dot email. Let's do this real quick. Let's add a name to our user so we can start making this a little more personal feeling. I don't think it got that by default. So we're going to add one. Rails, generate migration, add name to users. And I'm going to guess a little bit if this is the right syntax. Column users, name, string. Oh, that's great. Good job, Rails. Hi, great. Awesome. Jump into our Rails console. We should just have our one user, and we're going to just say user.first, update attribute, name, and Brandon. Awesome. All right, so now instead of continually saying email, we can say user.names recipes. So this isn't going to work for right now because we need the user. Why didn't we get it automatically? Well, we didn't get it automatically because it's not an Inertia page. It's just a normal React component. We're not having Inertia render it. Inertia's props are only going to show up automatically if Inertia rendered the prop. In this case, Inertia didn't render layout. Recipe list did. This is normal React flow. Nice, Brandon's recipes. That's fun. We'll change it here too because it just looks a little nicer. So this is all well and good. And if you've ever worked with a single page app, you'd probably think this is a totally reasonable way of doing it. But if you're like me, you probably have, and if you're a Rails user, you probably have a really low bar for how much copy pasting you're willing to do. You don't really want to because now we have recipes list and this looks great. But if I select one of our recipes, well, it's not there. Why is it not there? Oh, well, we never added it. So how do we add it? Well, we go over here to recipe and then we add our layout. And then we have to pass a user to it. So we'd need to pull the user as a prop, even though recipe isn't really using that. And we don't just have to do it here, we have to do it on every single new page. And part of what makes Rails so great is that it doesn't make us do things like that. It just knows all of your views are going to render within the application layout. Let's do something similar to that in Inertia. So if we hop into the Inertia docs, we can scroll, I think, let's look to see where we have layout. Maybe pages? Here we go, yep, creating layouts. So this is basically what we did. But what would be better is if the layout was persistent. What if the layout was automatic? And that is what we're really after. Not only do we want it to be persistent, we want it to be a default. So how do we do that? Well, Inertia has some great docs, and this is a place we're going to refer to it here. We're going to look at React. This is selected automatically for me because I view these docs all the time. And we want to set up this concept here. We want to resolve this component. And if there's no layout, let's set a default layout. This will automatically set the page layout to layout if a layout has not already been set for that page. If needed, you can disable the default layout on a specific page by setting the layout to null. That's kind of nice. Wow, you can even conditionally set the layout based on the page name. We don't need that for now. We're going to go with this basic level for default layouts. So where does this code live? We never really looked at anything like this, right? We did, just very, very briefly, because this is part of the code that the Inertia installer generated for us. So we see here, we have our resolve component set up, and it's requiring pages. This is under the hood of how this is really working. Whenever we're generating a page, Inertia gets the page's name, and then it's going to dynamically require the component we need and pass it to this resolve component function. Or the resolve component function is going to call this. And there's that pages directory. So if you really hate this pages directory, you can actually just go ahead and change this to whatever you want. So let's look at what Inertia wants us to change this to. I'll slide this down so that we have room to look at both of these at the same time. So right now, oops. Yeah, that's not going to work. Side by side. So you can probably guess that I'm normally using a much larger monitor than I thought it was a good idea to screencast from. Drop this down to the mobile view. That is close enough. Perfect. So we have our resolve component here, and what it turns out we can do is name. We're going to change this to an import statement. I assume that'll let us leave off the default. It's interesting. I also have a place that I'm doing this otherwise, so I can refer to a code example I've already created if need be. But yeah, it looks like using that import will let us leave off the default, so that's nice. And the import is a promise. So to kind of copy what they're doing here, all right, so if page.layout equals undefined. And just to make sure it was clear what the Inertia docs are saying, they're saying the whole point of doing this, if page.layout is undefined, is to allow you to override the page's layout. And the reason we check for undefined instead of just not page layout is just as the doc said, that will allow you to have no layout on a page. If you just want to specify a null, null is not undefined. So we can get through this check. If it's not undefined, we're going to do the same thing they did. Page layout equals layout. And then we will return the page. And what is layout? Well, layout is the component we just created. We could have named it anything. I want to be clear that this is not like a magic name or anything. We called it, the reason it's called layout is because right here in our components, that's what we named it. I wonder where we are. We are in packs, so I want to get to, I want to keep going. No, that was it. Yeah, / components layout. Perfect. So let's go ahead and refresh here. And I think we're going to end up with a problem. Yeah, cannot read property name of undefined. That's strange, isn't it? Well, it's coming from right here. And the reason it's coming from there is now that the layout is automatic, nothing's passing it. Nothing's passing user to us anymore. So for now, let's just remove it so we can get this to render. One problem at a time. And we need to make sure. Okay, this is pretty good, except for one kind of glaring issue. Where's our page content? So the problem is we're not actually passing children either. We're passing nothing. So let's go back to Inertia's docs here. And let's see what its layout looked like. We kind of buzzed right through that. Here we go. So what does a layout look like? You'll see that it does accept children. That's what we're used to seeing. But the way they're actually using it is layout is not directly used as a component. It's a function that accepts a page. So let's write it like that. So if we go back to layout, we no longer want to export this component directly. We want to export a function that accepts a page and then renders our layout. So if we go back here now we have our page. And if we go back to our recipes, we end up with a huge error. Of course, because we're still using it the old way directly here. So let's remove that now that this is dynamic. We don't need that anymore. And we should render the layout. Awesome. Now, across both pages, we have our layout. And just to really send this home, the reason we did that if undefined and what that whole thing was is because now it's possible for us to apply a dynamic layout. So if we had another layout here, well, for example, we could turn off the layout for the recipe list. Or we could add a different layout. here. Never tried this, but it should work fine. Should just end up with the word hello. Yep, yeah, we have a different layout. But of course, we want this page to accept our default layout. So let's go back to this. This is awesome. So we got one problem left, however. We liked this before. We like this saying the actual user's name's recipe. But because of the way this is set up, we can't directly pass the props anymore. It's being determined right there. There is not a way to directly pass props in. So what do we do? Well, the good news is this isn't the only way to get props in an inertia component. Let's go back to our layout, and we don't need to see both of these anymore. So we know we're not getting user, so let's just give up on it. Let's pull in a hook from the Inertia framework. So we're going to go back to Inertia React, and we're going to use a hook called usePage. Now what usePage is going to do, among other things, it's going to give us access to the props that have been passed to this. And as we know, user, courtesy of our Inertia share from all the way back on our application controller, user is passed to every single page. So even though it's not passed to layout directly, we can use context to get it out of Inertia. So let's go ahead and do that. Const, we get a number of things from this. One of them is the URL, another is the props. Let's just focus on the props for now. So we're going to use object destructuring syntax to get just the props, and we're going to destructure a little further to get the user. So now we can go back down here, re-enable our user, and we should be getting back our username. And there we go. And we're getting it on both pages. So let's do one last thing here. These are still regular links. Let's make them inertia links. So in addition to use page, let's pull in inertia link. Because if we wanted this, let's just say, for the sake of example, this should go to recipes, and so should this. We go look at a recipe. Now we go back to Brandon's recipes. Well, what's going on? We're doing a whole page reload, aren't we? Oh, did we not reload? Yep, there we go. We're doing a whole page reload because it's a normal link. We don't want that. Inertia already knows how to fall back to a normal link if it needs to. So let's change these to an inertia link. And the great thing about an inertia link is you'll notice there's class name on here too. Anything you could pass to a link, you can do with an inertia link. In fact, you can even do more than that. The inertia link accepts a prop called, I think maybe as, let's see. Yeah, as, so you could even say as a div or as a list item. By default, it's going to be an anchor tag. So now, save this. The next one, I promise I'll run Webpacker so we can stop hitting refresh. And now we can navigate here and use inertia to go back to our list. Awesome. So this is really starting to look like an app. So what did we do? Well, we added our first bit of markup, which has nothing to do with inertia, but it gives us a little bit of a better feeling. The biggest thing we did here is we created a persistent layout. We came up with a way in React and with inertia to simulate that awesome Rails application layout feature. So now every new page we create is going to automatically get this layout all the way back to our good old root page we haven't seen in forever. Hello, YouTube. So we have gone from a fresh Rails installation all the way through an extremely simple but functional application. I think this is an excellent start. When in our next installation of this, I think we're going to create a form. I think we're going to start allowing a user to create recipes or maybe add ingredients to recipes. Those are both on our to-do list. And I think a form is the next thing to look at. How Inertia handles forms, what is the easiest way to write them, and how we can handle that in our apps. So until then, I am still Brandon Shar. I still work at Bellawatt, and in my capacity there, we are still the creators and maintainers of Inertia Rails. Thank you so much for watching.